Okay, so I'm Candace Agonafir. My advisors are Dr. Kambavardi, Dr. Devanini, Dr. Lakikar, and my NOAA mentor is Dr. Rodell from the National Weather Service. So the title of my research is a citizen science approach for urban flood risk analysis using data analytics and machine learning. A little about me. I'm in the 4th year. I'm a PhD candidate at the City College of New York. And I had received my MS from NYU and my BS from St. John's University. I also used to play basketball at USC. So that's why I have a picture of Diane Williamson. So the intent of this research is to develop novel approaches toward the development of an urban flood risk map for New York City using data science techniques on citizen-generated data. This is a flowchart depicting my research model. Since the time is a little short, I'm just going to talk about the 2 published studies, or the 1 published study that we have and the other study that is currently under peer review. So at the top, it represents the climatic and infrastructural analysis conducted by the LASSO zero inflated negative binomial generalized linear regression model based on 311 data. And then to the left, this is the spatial variability, which was analyzed by a random forest regression model, where topographic and land feature conditions, socioeconomic variables serve as inputs. So these variables also serve as inputs for the feature steps of the digital surface model and also the merged rainfall precipitation product. So basically, my research is using data analytics and machine learning to identify localized areas of street flooding. So this first paper was published in the Journal of Hydrology late December. The study, titled Understanding New York City Street Flooding Through 301 Complaints, presents an evaluation of New York City's 301 street flooding reports via an inference model as a way to detect the zip codes where street flooding is prevalent. The potential explanatory variables for street flooding complaints were precipitation amounts and 301 sewer backup, manhole overflow, and catch basin complaints. Using stage 4 radar precipitation data and 301 sewer reports spanning a 10-year period, a least absolute shrinkage and selection operator, which is known as LASSO, regression analysis with an embedded zero inflation model was used to detect the variables statistically significant as predictors of flooding, flood complaint counts specific to each zip code. So we found that catch basin complaints were selected in 47% of the zip codes. And catch basin infrastructural issues are of noteworthiness since they directly lead to street flooding if they are not working properly. Now, for zip codes experiencing explanatory power from a combined precip with a backup or a manhole overflow issue, this signifies a chaotic condition where it is not only raining and the streets are flooded, but internal drains are being overwhelmed and working in reverse order. Also, areas with a high frequency of street flooding reports was shown as not necessarily having the greatest rate of street flooding report increase. In these areas, street flooding may be chronic, where residents appear to experience street flooding during moderate conditions and subsequently file more complaints. Now, the study may have been limited by low resident participation, as demonstrated by increased reports leading to a reduced variability. The crowdsourcing offers insight into the infrastructure of our city. Therefore, there should be more efforts to increase this participation, which I'll talk about a little bit. For most of this presentation, I'm going to talk about our most recent paper, which involves the random forest learning, machine learning algorithm. The title of this paper is a machine learning approach to evaluate the spatial variability of New York City street flooding. and it was submitted to the Journal of Computers, Environment, and Urban Systems. The study hypothesized that one, physical differences such as precipitation pattern, percent impervious cover, slope, and elevation, also the presence of buildings, they affect the natural processes of infiltration, thus they have a major contribution to street flood occurrence. Now, our second hypothesis is that the demographic, such as financial, physical, and behavioral characteristics of the respondents of the New York City 311 reporting platform affect the proclivity towards addressing concerns. So now, to detect the neighborhoods with increased flood risk, we're using the citizen-generated data, which is the consolidation of the eyewitness accounts. This affords particular value. And employing the random forest regression machine learning algorithm along with physical, climatic, socioeconomic, and this citizen-generated data aggregated to the zip code level, the study presents an evaluation of the variability of street flooding within the zip codes of New York. So the issue of urban flooding. Urban flooding poses a serious threat to life. People may drown in submerged basements or vehicles, become carried away by the waters, or endure fatal injuries by collapsed buildings and fallen trees. The devastation caused by Hurricane Ida is a recent example of this human endangerment by urban flooding. Overall in the nation, there were 91 reported fatalities, but there were 13 lives lost in the New York City area alone. So in addition, urban flooding incurs substantial financial strain, also in addition to the loss of life. Widespread damage is sustained upon structures, train systems, electrical systems, and more, bringing forth extensive costs to repair. Now, the issues within urban flood research. We have warning systems and they're based on observed heavy rainfall, yet they do not take into account topography, land surface conditions, or the drainage network. Second, many flash flood warnings are sent out at the county scale. Yet in a city like New York City, there may be between 1 to 2 million people in a county. So warnings at a finer scale, such as the zip code level, will have greater utility. Now, a resolution is our study. Our study evaluates the specific impact of each land and topographical feature that it has towards street flooding. So resolving the scale, the study examines at the zip code level. Resolving and capturing the street flooding occurrence issue, crowdsource data, which is the eyewitness accounts, we use that. Now, in the analysis, New York City street flood reports are aggregated to the zip code level, and they are taken as a response variable. And for the predictors, we use 301 catch basin variables, 2 population features, 7 precipitation variables, land feature and topographical conditions, and then we also incorporate 121 sociodemographic factors. For the determination of variable importance, the random forest regression model is used, and this works well with large data sets, and it does not have issues with overfitting. Out-of-bag predictions were then determined, and the explained variance was calculated by the correlation between observed and predicted values of the response variable. So this is a depiction of the models we input into our random forest model algorithm. So I'm going to go through this a little quickly. Basically, I'm just going to talk about the variables we used. We used the elevation, slope, impervious cover, building effects, and green roof cover as far as the land feature topography variables. For the physical characteristic and population dynamics, we use the centroid of the zip code, area, population, and density, and also catch basins per unit area. For climatic, we use hourly rainfall and daily rainfall. And then for the socio-demographic categories, some of the categories that might have been important was commuting style. We have race, we have income, English speaking, and whether you own a house or not, and we have more. And then for infrastructure, we use catch basin. The top 50 predictors of the 141 overall predictors that we use were commuting, driving alone, the spatial coordinations of the zip code, buildings, area, slope, employment status, mortgage, building footprint, housing tenure, elevation, population density, residents 1 year abroad, and exported. As we can see in this first model, commuting, driving to work is high, so is the Y coordinate, but also so is building, which is noteworthy considering that many models do not incorporate building, the number of buildings when predicting street flooding. So for model 2, we find that building, again, commuting are also in the top 15. This time building is much higher than commuting. And then in this model, so in this first model, street flooding is the response. For this second model, we're looking at the response towards catch basin, just to get an overall idea. So we see that buildings are a strong predictor for catch basin complaints. Now, model 3 is the same as model 1, except that we add catch basin complaints to it. And when we add catch basin complaints with street flooding serving as the response, we find that catch basins comprises the overwhelming majority. So is driving to work, the spatial coordinate area. Okay, my computer was frozen for a little bit. So we also found the zip code size has an effect.
You need to conclude. You could not finish all your slides, man. So hurry up, we have 1 more minute to conclude.
Okay. So for the discussion, we find that over a third of the top 15 predictors are feature and surface characteristics when street flooding is a response. And a noteworthy observation or finding was that building factors heavily influenced street flooding, spatial variability in New York City. And we also found that the commuters who drove to work have strong significant importance. So this shows that there might be bias in crowdsourced. And the research has socioeconomic implications. If we can localize street flooding, we can improve the health and safety of our residents, and also we can save them from financial loss, such as vehicle and property damage. We also found that if we increase crowdsourced data, we have lower variability, better model, benefits the model, better model results. So I have a Twitter account where I'm going to import the Twitter feeds and display it on Google Maps. And this is an example of just the Twitter I ran it in R today, and you can see little dots where street flooding was tweeted about, or not street flooding, but flooding within New York City. So we're going to work on improving that and making that in real time. And then that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yes.
Yeah, it looks like, if I understand this right, you pretty much use this for climatology more or less, right? I mean, to be able to use that really for forecasting, you would also have to bring in model forecasts from the weather service, for example, like from the gas model, or correct?
Right. The goal is that given a forecast, because of the findings that we have with the topography and the crowdsourced data, that depending on the forecast, we can we will forecast the areas where flooding will happen based on a 1 inch forecast, or one inch per hour forecast, 2 inch per hour forecast, and so forth. So our models will reflect that depending on whatever the forecast is for that day.
So it's a 1 inch per hour that you're using as an assumption.
No, we're using the data that we already have for from 2010 to 2019. So the model's based on historical precipitation radar data.
Okay, thank you. So 1 more.
How did you get like the significance of the tweets that you used in that analysis? Like, how do you know that they were talking about actual flooding that was occurring in New York City and not using flood as a metaphor, or not tweeting 5 times in a row about the flood that was continuously happening and counting that as 5 separate incidents?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So this thing just started about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and I just got the Twitter developer platform application approved. So we're gonna work on this and find a way to, make the hash, filter it out a little bit. But this is just very, very preliminary. It's very rough. But also with the Twitter account that I have, I'm hoping that people could tag the account with flooding itself if it got enough awareness. But right now, that was just a brief picture showing the keyword flood. So it could be anything. It could be somebody using it.
Okay. Very good question. Okay, our next speaker is, thank you very much. Let's talk.
Thanks.